Hello everyone, my name is Akesh Gupta and I'm with Lightspeed Solutions. For those of you who have worked with IronSpeed Designer over the years, you folks probably have watched many of our videos. As we started working with IronSpeed Designer from their first release back in 2004, we have developed many applications and delivered many solutions for our clients. Unfortunately, with the sad news of IronSpeed shutting their doors, we had a big responsibility to help our clients migrate away from iron speed to something that's more sustainable. As we looked at various options which were available to us, most of our clients were interested in doing with something within Visual Studio and relying less on a third-party product, just because they would like to mitigate their risks. With all the knowledge we have gained over the last 20 years and working with tools like IronSpeed and many other code generators, we realized that there were some common things which we call as a framework and a presentation layer, which is what most of the code generators helped us achieve. Upon looking at the framework, and IronSpeed was no exception, IronSpeed had an excellent framework with base classes already built, and IronSpeed generator or IronSpeed designer would then generate the UI layer. But at the end, every single component was calling the base application or the base classes to do most of the operations. So as we started looking at that approach that made most of the code generators work, we realized that there are two parts to an application: a framework or the back end where a generic code has been written, and a front end which adapts to various entities. We have been reviewing various options over the last 3-4 years and have come to conclusion that a similar approach can work very well within the Microsoft MVC, all within a Visual Studio. With that knowledge and the integration of the Kendo UI, which is entirely HTML5 output, we have developed an MVC framework. I would call it a methodology. There's nothing proprietary about it, which enables users to develop applications, line of business applications in particular, very similar to IronSpeed Designer. In today's presentation, I would like to share with you an output which has been generated or worked using MVC framework that Lightspeed Solutions have architectured over the last 4 years. Unlike any application, every application begins with a login page. Things to remember are like single login or Active Directory login and ability to reset your password. All those functionalities are built into this basic application. So at this time, I would like to present to you an application which was done for a pharmaceutical company to manage their patients as well as their services. Of course, all the data used in this application is generated. So let's log in. When everyone logs into the application, they are always greeted with what we call as a landing page and the menus to navigate. As we realize people are using more and more of Microsoft Office ribbon bar products, and we thought that a similar menu might be helpful for people to become familiar with the use of the tool. So we have provided here a ribbon-like Microsoft Office ribbon-like menu option, which allows you to navigate into various sections of the applications like patient, physicians, pharmacies, etc. in this particular case. And of course, I'm logged in as administrator of the tool, and hence I'm able to see all the menu options. Once we will talk about the security of this tool, based on your user login and the roles assigned, you will only be given access to the menus which you have access to. So when somebody clicks on any menu in IronSpeed Designer applications or any application, we are all greeted with what we call as a list view. One of the major difficulties we had with most of our clients was the designing of a grid view when the number of users who are looking to use the tool is a lot. As you can imagine, a pharmaceutical company with almost 500 people, very difficult to make every customer see things differently. So of course, here what we are showing you is a list of the patients. And of course, some of the data is redundant just because we have still not done the filtering. So do not look at that aspect of the tool. So the very first thing is, let's say we want to add or remove columns. By using the Kendo grid, we are able to give a users an ability to build their own grids by removing and adding the columns that are of importance to them. So as you can see, I am removing some columns and adding some columns from the grid view. Since we are using an entity framework based backend and the entire front end is based on the JSON object model, the interactivity or the response time at the client side is very, very quick. There's no postback going on at this point. The navigation of the page from one to the next page is quite fast as well. Our focus is we are looking for 1 to 2 seconds of response time. If you would like to do the grouping of data, as somebody would like to do it, you can just drag and drop columns and data gets grouped. If you would like to sort, you can just click on the columns and data gets sorted. If you would like to search any place or any record in the entire system, you can just type in what we call as a global search and system will search for it. And if you would like to search a single column, you can basically search for a single column at that point. So having these capabilities allows anyone to slice dice data very quickly. And of course, not to mention, we can export this data to a CSV or Excel or a PDF if the user chooses to. Of course, the PDF option is not here, but it's definitely available. But most of the time, people have taken the time to slice and dice the data, got their analysis, and then they lose it all. When they open up the patient screen again, they have to start all over. To rectify that problem, we went to create an ability that allows users to save their views with their own names. So I can basically create a view by the name My View of Patients and save it as a default view, which means when I will come to the patients next time, this is the view that I will get. And if I would like this view of data to be available to all the users of the system, I can make it a system view. You can define as many system views and as many personal views as you wish, but only one view, both personal and system, can be defined as a default. So when a system logs you in, the very first attempt is made to see if you have any default user view of the data, and if none is found, we restore to a default system view of the same data. So having this ability, just as you can see, I'm going to save it as My View of Patients, save, and let me actually filter the data so that I'm only looking at folks whose native language is English, just so that it makes it easier. So I'm down to 1418 records, and that's a view I would like to save as. Now, if I shut down patients and go back to patients, my default view will be what I saved. And if I want to toggle among different views, all I have to do is select whichever view I want. This ability allows our users to use the system in a very fluid manner. So I would say half the reports which every user is looking to request from a system can all be sorted out just because of this ability. In addition, as you open up multiple objects from the menu, they all open in what we call as an MDI. So this allows folks to work with multiple MDI windows at any given time. So imagine you're working on a patient screen and some phone call comes and you need to research the patient. All you need to do is look up another patient tab search for whatever you were looking for, and get your results. And when done, close it out. The first patient screen will not be affected in any way, shape, or form. So having the MDI gives you the ability to now work on many entities at the very same time. Now, of course, this is what I would compare to iron speed grid views or table views. As compared to iron speed's model of generating a table view or table page for every single entity, our philosophy was to build only one generic table and dynamically bind it to the entity. For those of you who are looking at the technical details of the solution, you will be surprised to find that we only have a single show table page as compared to the iron speed world in this entire application. And using metadata, it automatically binds to the source of data at runtime. Once you open up a single record, system is going to take you to what we would call as a landing page for a patient, which I could easily compare to a show page. It could be an edit page or a show page, depending on what you're looking for. And as you can imagine, a patient would have many, many child objects. In this particular case, you have roughly 14 to 20 child objects. When we talk about the child objects, meaning related data, as one-to-many relationships. There also we had a challenge to say that when you have so many children objects, it's sometimes very overwhelming to see all the details. As compared to iron speed, we decided to only load the first tab, but still show all the tabs and only load their data on demand when you click the tab. So just to give you an example, as we click on, say, addresses tab here or addresses group, I want to clarify that this thing at the top or these tabs at the top are not the tabs, but the groups of tabs. Because in this particular case, we would have many different tabs. And just to make it simpler, we define what we call as the grouping of data. So once I click the addresses, you have two tab data. One is digital address and another is physical address. In this particular situation, the physical address details have not been loaded yet, and only the digital address has been loaded. When the user clicks on physical address for the very first time, only then the data is loaded. And once it's loaded, then when you toggle back and forth, there's no further reloading going on because the objects are already at the client side. If need be, either through jQuery or through manual processing, the grids can be refreshed. Remember, all grid controls that you see on the screen are all bound to a single page in the Lightspeed MVC solution. Of course, this is not an RSP to MVC conversion. It's a migration where we did not think that any tool out there can convert an RSP project into an MVC seamlessly. And a lot of times it's not a good idea because then we do not know where the issue is coming from. So we decided to come up with what we would call as a migration approach. So in this particular case, we have various different groups of tabs. And as the user clicks on different groups, one or more tabs will open up and the user can work with them. The same approach is followed when you say, look at physicians. I'm looking at my physicians. I can open up a physician and I can see same approach. Here we have really taken the time to group the details into various sections. And for each section, you have what I would call as tabs. If you want to close all the MDI windows, there's a global close all button, which closes and brings you to your main default landing page. Under some situations, and the best example I can give you is for security users, you may have more than one tab. This is an example where we are not doing the grouping of tabs, but showing you tabs automatically at the bottom. Or other details where you have security roles defined. So you have multiple tabs of data. Of course, here you're able to look at a single tab. I can definitely pull up an example where you will be seeing multiple tabs without any uh, grouping of data. Let me see if pairs have it. It seems like in this particular example, we went with the grouping, but imagine 10, 15 tabs here coming up very, very quickly within seconds. And we want to make sure that these tabs come quickly on the page without reloading every single tab whenever you reset a page or reload a page. The next thing that's very important and critical here is the concept of a breadcrumb. As folks work with the patients, I go in, I filter my details. Say, for example, Wayne. I search my data. I'm editing a record. When you're editing a record, the top bar shows you where you are, how you reach there, and if you need to go back, you are just a single click away. And it takes you back to your filtered list, not the list of your entire patients or your view of patients. This comes in very handy to say that if you have shortlisted your records, when you are working on those records, you can easily navigate back in a very quick format. In order to add a new shipment record, you can click on add, and the breadcrumb keeps showing you that you are on the patient list, you are watching this patient, and then you are in the shipment tab and you're trying to add a new shipment. If you need to go back to the patient record, just click on the patient. If you need to go back to the patient list, click on the list. And as you can see, the breadcrumb comes in very handy when you are navigating in the system. As more and more clients always requested applications to be multi-tenant, we automatically designed a feature set in our MVC solution where just by selecting a different tenant, the entire system will automatically refresh the data without altering a single line of code. Since it's a multi-tenant application, our lookup tables will also be global. Global lookup tables like country, gender, suffix, time zones, which are going to be the same regardless of which drug you're dealing with, or drug-specific lookup tables. As you can see, this application has roughly over 100 lookup tables. They're all specific to each drug. So if I go to a drug A, manage my address types, and the address types could be for different modules. Maybe this is a little complex lookup table. So let's actually pick up a very simple lookup table as to what are my attachment types. Probably let's just go unit of measure. So right now, drug A is sold only in each and 20 pack, and say we want to go to drug B, or let's say drug A is already also sold in 10 pack. Now, if I go to drug B and go to unit of measure, I do not want to see a 10 pack. As you can see, you will not see a 10 pack. Of course, for our demonstration purpose, we probably cloned the drug A data to drug B from the lookup tables. That's why all the data was similar. But the drug A and drug B, they have the same similar different lookup tables, and the patient data, physician data, pharmacy data is also going to be separated. So having a multi-tenant model built in to the framework of MVC, which is once again not proprietary, everything is available to you as part of the Visual Studio solution, works wonderful. In order to understand security, which of course in RNSP Designer was all at the design time, which means whenever you need to alter the security, you need to open the project in RNSP Designer, run through the security configuration wizard, and then redeploy. From our experience working with all major companies in many different domains throughout the world, It's difficult to redeploy an application in production. It could take you weeks to get all the approvals, to get all the go live thumbs up before you can deploy. So a single change, which might take 5 minutes, may take 2 weeks to go live. And a lot of those changes revolve around security. So our security concept is that we define roles. For each role, you have access to entities, address type, affiliation, and so on. And in each one of the entity types, you can define this role can do what. Add, delete, grid meaning view, show table page, edit, show, export. They are generic actions. Custom A through custom D are what I would call as more specific actions if they're programmed. And that's how easy it is to manage the permissions for each role and for each object. So once the roles are defined, each user can be given one or more roles. And once you give the user one or more roles, they will automatically inherit all the permissions for each role collectively. So this allows users to alter the role and they become live right away rather than waiting to redeploy it. The security is also Active Directory enabled. As folks would like to tweak some settings, we came up with this concept to say allow of course, the tool admins to tweak settings. We have some settings where if somebody wants to change the name of the application or the environment or whatever you want, like version number, what you want to separate it to be breadcrumb, or in case you want to do an email and you want to change the host, port number, or sender email, and so on, they all can be changed from the front end without going into the back end and coding and redeploying. Behind the framework or behind this methodology of using dynamic feature sets, we have approximately 20 framework tables. Once again, we are just using framework as a methodology, which to avoid redundant data reads, we are loading them in what we will call as the application cache. And application cache automatically gets reloaded whenever any of those entities get changed. And system allows you to automatically reload the cache in case you need to for one reason or the other, in case any of the backend data was changed, not from the front end, but the back end. So having this very fluid security system with the ability to cache the framework related tables, the response time is very, very quick. The entire framework was developed in .NET MVC 4.0 using C# and SQL 2012. The front end is built all using the Telerik Kendo UI. That's the controls we have really picked up for the front end, which is all HTML. Any display or any demo on the Kendo UI can easily be integrated into the application. The back end, which is what made IronSpeed a great product, where it would scan the database, you include which database tables there are, and IronSpeed would automatically have the business layer and data access layer available to you. That feature set was replaced by Mindscape's feature. Of course, the Mindscape HQ has an ORM by the name of Lightspeed. Of course, this is has nothing to do with our organization. The Lightspeed 5 ORM gave you the capabilities to drag and drop the tables which you need to include, and it will automatically generate the business layer and the data access layer for you. This helped us tremendously reduce the amount of effort we need to make. And with the robustness of this backend ORM, I would say it would mimic replacing the IronSpeed's data access layer and a business layer in one shot. And the entire solution still sits within Visual Studio. The only application you open to manage any project in our approach, our methodology or framework, whatever you may call, is Visual Studio. 100%. We do not work outside of Visual Studio, and there's nothing proprietary. Anyone who has a project, all they need is Visual Studio. If they do not have Mindscape's ORM installed, it does not matter. It still works. It just the only advantage if you have the Mindscape ORM installed, it just has a visual a designer which just aids in a little bit of a development. So your development is, I would say, partially quicker, but it's not mandatory. So far we talked about what makes the solution unique and how we learn from IronSpeed and other code generators over the years and try to build something which has brought in all of our learning over the years. Of course, this will give you a system where you can build the basic add, edit pages, delete pages, CRUD pages, and so on. And the data can be all managed and with all the validation rules and email notifications. Those all things basically work very well. Once every single thing is working well, the next thing most of the organizations always ask is dashboards, just so that they have a visual of where they are at any given time. Now, when it comes to dashboard, it was very difficult, once again, to design a dashboard that works for everyone. So after doing a lot of brainstorming, our team came up with the approach where dashboard is also treated as a blank canvas and let folks define their layout of how they would like to see the data. And then you have what we call as dashlets, which are available to every user based on their security level. And all you need to do is drag and drop the dashlets. And once you drag and drop the dashlets, they will automatically show you their values based on who you are and what you need to do. If you do not want a dashlet, all you have to do is cross out and the dashlet will go away. It could be graphs, it could be lists, it could be anything you're looking for. And as I was mentioning, it could be any of the Kendo UI charts. And being that we are in the pure MVC architecture, every chart that you see here is coming from a controller as a JSON object, and then a jQuery type JavaScript code is applied to the JSON object to do a display of a chart. In order to manage these things from an administrative perspective, they're all available to you in the development in your dashlets. So each dashlet is really metadata managed, where based on what chart you're looking at, if it's defined as Kendo chart, we have a JSON object which is coming in. And after a JSON object, in this case, the JSON object is on the patient controller with this name. And we are applying a script to convert that JSON object into a chart for you. So this should give you an ability to look at a way to make the charting as simple as the backend provides the JSON object and the front end applies the script on the JSON object to deliver a chart. And it works marvelously. So any single thing that's available on the Kendo UI website is as easy as 1, 2, 3 to implement. If you have lists already in your dashlet or dashboard, I would say, you can just click on them and system will open up that patient for you. So as you can see, as I'm clicking on a different patient, it's opening up different tabs for different patients. So having multiple tabs, having a dashlet-based dashboard system allows various users to go through available dashlets based on their security and build a custom dashboard which suits their needs. This is more like an iGoogle style. Once people get used to it, they can define it, and they basically can have even multiple dashboards because they can save any dashboard with one or more names, and and out of all the available dashboards that they have, they can qualify any one of their dashboards as a default. And then when you log on, when you sign in for the very first time, you will be greeted by your default dashboard as you had planned. And for those of you who may have watched that, how come my alerts now have some data? The reason is because your default drug was drug A and we were in drug B. So if I now change my drugs, you might be able to see some data being different to show you that yes, indeed, the data at the back end is different for each drug. Another cool feature of the framework, for those of you who have struggled with RNSP Designer's large list selector, whenever you are in an edit mode of a single record and you need to work on a drop-down list, we did not load any drop-down list data on the page load time. All the drop-down data is loaded on the click event of the drop-down. So as you type in something, only at that time we are fetching X number of records. And as a user types fields in, the list starts getting narrower and narrower, and hence there's no need for large list selector. So one of the major issues was a large list selector, the first 1000 or whatever entry we put in, those are preloaded when the page loads, which makes the page very slow. So as you can see, with so many different tabs or so many different drop-down lists, we did not load a single record in any of the drop-downs. We only load the data when you type ahead or click on the down arrow to load the data. And as you type data in, system will filter the data. And if you notice very carefully, it is not even saying starts with, it's doing contains. We have validated this framework with 1 to 2 million of rows of worth of data for an entity with a response time of less than 1 to 2 seconds, given the amount of data as well as optimizations at the SQL backend level. So hopefully this gives you a glimpse of what's possible. And here's an example of how we are still within this mode and kind of opening up in what we call as a modal mode so that it's easier for folks to say, we understand where we are. All right. Now, to understand a little bit more about how the framework tables work, they're also available to you and exposed where, say, for example, somebody's trying to alter the menus, which is also a metadata managed. Here's an example of my menus, and every single menu has properties as to if you think about it. So let's actually search for patients and just try to understand what happens. So when somebody goes to all patients, system, sorry, not this one. Let's go to patients. When you go to patients, here's the name of the patient, here's a menu link, here's a CSS class which defines the icon, and system is basically tied to a security tied to the module patient for security purpose, and that is the sort order. So by you playing around with the metadata of the menus, you can very easily move between patients and physicians. So as an exercise, if I want the physicians to be number one, then patients, all I have to do is go back to my physicians and change the order from 200 to 50 and reload the page from the top, and you will see the physicians came ahead of patients. That's how easy it is to manage the metadata based tables, and anyone can do it at any given time without recompiling the code and redeploying it. Another very common thing that most of the folks have asked for is changing a field name. So say, for example, you're in patients and someone says, I would like to change one of the key fields. And that key field could be, say, rather than calling, let's call it like the DOB, we would like to call it date of birth. That's where you will notice that we have what we call as a resource tab. And guess what? It's already being replaced. So a date of birth field, which was a real field name, was replaced by DOB. So if somebody wants, they can define these type of resources and their translations in different languages on the fly. So let's just say we call it DOB2, just so that you can see. And each user belongs to a localization, which means each user has a language, default language. So when a user logs in based on his or her language, any field that is defined with the translation will automatically take into effect. So if I don't have to even close the resources, I can go into my patients and open up any patients, and I should see DOB2 now, just because that's how we made it work. So having this type of flexibility allows some minor adjustments and tweaks to be made on the fly without once again recompiling the code. Of course, we can spend many hours talking about how the framework works, but having the metadata driven framework allows you to do a lot of things very, very quickly. For those of you who, I will take another example, which might give you a much deeper understanding of how we think and how we want to implement things. For those of you who have always implemented make, model, year type of drop down cascading lists, of course, you can go to page by page and start typing your code or going through the wizards of your code generators or any other tool you're using and start working that way. But in our case, we always have, say, two fields, country and city. Whenever a country gets picked, only then filter out the cities. So what we have implemented here is what we call as, what we will call here as the combo box filters and combo box settings. These two things allow us to define how to filter every combo box as well as implement dependent combo boxes. So as you can see, by me saying that the country ID or by me saying the country underscore state ID cascades from country ID, any page, any view of any entity, if they have these two fields, country and country underscore state ID, will automatically implement the make model example without any additional line of coding. So if someone goes to go to, say, a patient and say they would like to add a new patient, and that particular patient actually over here probably doesn't have any address. So let's actually go back to a patient and pick a patient and try to enter a digital address or physical address, sorry. As you know, physical addresses have country and state, and as you can see, state is grayed out just because it is dependent on the country. So depending on which country I pick, I will basically now have states. Of course, for those of you who say, I don't see any data here, let's actually go in and add another country. We only had one country, United States. Let's add Canada. And within Canada, we can add a state, and I'm not sure about the Canadian states, but let's just type in Toronto. So now we have a Canada with Toronto. I go back to my patient address and I go back and pick Canada. So if you notice that by me adding a new country without even refreshing the page, which means I did not lose any of my data, but I just went to I went to use the same table whose data I just refreshed into the tab. Data is there. System is not now showing you all the valid values. So I'm just trying to bring to the audience here an approach that might be of interest to you to migrate your applications from IronSpeed to more structured and more open Visual Studio .NET MVC solution. Hope this also assists those of you who are trying to make a critical decision how to handle the loss of a great product like IronSpeed Designer. As far as the cost and the solution for Visual Studio, please call our organization. We'll be more than happy to review what you have. And from our experience and our methodology, it is many times faster to migrate the solution than to build the solution from scratch. Hope you like this presentation. And for more information, please visit our website, www.lightspeedsolutions.com. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thanks for watching.